So it's great to see lots of you on the call today. The Chamber, obviously, like many of you, has been really adapting what we do, and it's been quite a journey, hasn't it? The last what are we on, week 12, I think, of lockdown. Our webinar programme actually is a really good way for us to keep in touch with businesses. So we're working with members and non-members at the moment. And our webinar series really has evolved, and we now do 4 webinars a week. So we start on a Tuesday afternoon with a kind of a networking session, which is just for members. And that one helps us have kind of breakout sessions and discussions, and we look at topical issues and let people network and expand your connections. But on a Tuesday evening, it's a guide to series, and this week was a guide to engaging content, and we had some really interesting looks at social media and Instagram and how do you plan all that engaging content last night. And we were also looking at animations and how to make your online content just pop in ways that a static PowerPoint or kind of static visuals maybe just doesn't quite do. So yeah, really interesting discussion last night. Our Wednesday series is all about people and supporting people, and that's been a really important one for us. We have done a lot looking at how to get businesses the right support they need. So on a Thursday, our session is aimed at the business, and that we've looked at things like the business support schemes. We've looked at strategy and planning and all sorts of different things. But the Wednesday session, we started that one off looking at mental health and well-being, and we've kind of worked through things like motivating people and managing remote teams and all sorts of support for people. But we always come back to how important it is to look after your people and your teams yourself. And even, you know, we're obviously learning things like tools and techniques that you can be passing on to your friends and family, because you never know when somebody's going to need a bit of support. And I've been saying this week that it's a bit like when we did used to all get on planes and the advice we got was put your own mask on first. So it's important to think about your own well-being and health. And if you're anything like my husband, then you're wearing out a path to your fridge way more than you used to. And maybe because you're not driving every day, then there are other things that you're consuming a bit more than you might have before we were all in lockdown. So, you know, some people are taking this time to kind of do lots of exercise and get out and about on bikes and get out into the fresh air. But it's as important to think about yourself and your team. And this is going to be a really interesting session today. Some of the other things that we've been doing, obviously, are updating our COVID hub on our website. And this week, there's been some really important updates to that. So the small business grants funding from Scottish Government has been extended and went live this week for you if you're in shared premises, if you you know, have a landlord that pays the rates bill rather than you. Before that, you weren't able to access the £10,000 grant, so that's all live now. But the other thing that Scottish Government did announce was that there's now a closing date to those applications. So you have to get your applications in for those schemes by the 10th of July, or the funding will be reappropriated into other places. So, you know, just please keep an eye on that if you haven't gone and applied for that yet. There's more information about the Test and Protect programme that's happening in Scotland. And obviously we're beginning to see what phase 2 might look like coming out of lockdown. So there's an awful lot of new information, and we put out an e-newsletter on a Wednesday that pulls all of that weekly content together. So watch out for that landing in your inbox. But I think that's really all I'm going to say. Looking forward to hearing a bit more. I always have to apologise profusely to the people that come onto our webinars on a Wednesday, because I have another session which kicks off at 1 o'clock. So, but the beauty of our webinars is that Sarah records them, makes a brilliant job of them. We put them up on our YouTube channel, and loads more people are seeing that content. So yeah, so well done to Sarah and Keith, who will be looking after you from our team today. So I will invite Richard on. I'm going to mute myself as soon as I can hear you, and then it's over to you guys.
Thanks very much, Alison. Richard, could I just double check that we can hear you?
I hope you can hear me. Can everyone hear me? Wave. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good.
One thing I did forget to mention, Teams has a layout of up to 9 tiles. So you'll notice that kind of around the screen, some people will be kind of jumping out when they switch their camera off. What you can do in order to get most of the session, you can actually pin one of the speakers. So you'll be able to pin Richard. And all you do, if you kind of hover over Richard's face,
that sounds ominous.
You'll see his name, and then you'll see 3 dots. If you click on that dot, you can pin Richard, and then that way you can focus more on actually what you can do it if you want to or not, entirely up to yourselves. But it's kind of nice, rather, because sometimes the screens can sort of flicker and you'll notice that he's down bottom left and then he's top right. So to actually kind of make the most of it. So as I said before, we'll be doing a Q&A with Richard. Richard's from Westfield Health, which is one of our kind of chamber member benefits. I'll let Richard do a little bit more explaining of what Westfield Health is just before we get going. As I have said, it is to be quite an interactive session, so if you've got questions that you want to come in with, then please feel free to. There's a couple of topics that we'll be discussing on the session today, so yeah, please just feel free to butt in, basically, if there's anything that you want to bring to it. So Richard, I guess to begin with, before we do kind of go into the Q&A, it would be good just to hear a little bit more about Westfield Health. I'm aware that there might be some members on the call who are not aware of it.
Okay, so Westfield Health, we're 100 years old, or we were last year, so we're in our 101st year. And you may well know us from a health insurance point of view in terms of our health cash plans. Part of what we did probably a good 5 years ago now was start to look at the market, what was relevant for clients and organisations, not just then, but now and in the future. And so we've sort of diversified what we do so that we're a broader health and wellbeing company. And my role as director of wellbeing is to develop and lead, if you like, everything that isn't non-insurance. So my responsibility is developing wellbeing interventions and working with clients to support them as an organisation in terms of how wellbeing programs for their employees can not only support the employees, but support them as an organisation to sort of perform the way they need to perform. I think more and more organisations are recognising that actually employees that are fit, healthy, well, they tend to perform better, be more productive. So I think the sound business sense, or recognition, should I say, of the sound business sense of investing in well-being. So that's sort of roughly what we're about. Perfect.
Thanks very much, Richard. Obviously, the last kind of 10 to 12 weeks have been different for people. Lockdown, nobody really, had done it before, obviously. So I guess kind of what would you say are the biggest challenges that people are facing now as we're well into lockdown?
I think everybody on this call will recognise that straight away, and it's basically adapting, isn't it? Adapting to what everybody now, it's becoming a boring phrase, the new normal. So how are we adapting to that? And I guess what we're also starting to recognise, and we're a few weeks ahead of Scotland down in England in terms of return to work. So, the new normal that we're perhaps just getting used to is going to start to change again. We're certainly not going to go back to where we were before. There's a lot of organisations I'm talking to on these types of conversations that are actually recognising that, people working from home, people working more remotely is a lot more efficient, a lot more effective for them. So I don't think we'll ever go back to where we were, but it's how we adapt to those changes. And those challenges of adaptation are going to be different for different types of workers that we're responsible for. So, people that are on furlough, they need our support in a different way from those that are key workers and home workers as good examples. Home workers, there's a big issue actually, and you might recognise it in yourselves in terms of overwork. So we used to do a lot of work with organisations before this situation where we were supporting them through education programmes when they were strategically closing offices down and moving people to home. So we're used to dealing with that. And before this situation, there were about 4 million home workers. Now they reckon 16 to 17 million across the UK, people working from home. Now, obviously, that's going to start reducing as there is a slow migration back to the workplace. So they're all different challenges for people. But I think for everyone, and everyone on this call, it's just the not knowing, isn't it? That's the biggest challenge of all. It's just not knowing what's going to be coming up in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely the case. So based on these challenges, how best can business leaders and HR professionals support their people during this time?
That's an interesting one. It crops up on all these seminars I've been doing. I was just saying to the guys before everybody came on, I've just been with Birmingham Chamber, so it's amazing how you can shoot around the UK these days with Zoom. And it came out strongly there. I think for a lot of people, it's, human nature. We're wired to operate in a certain way, and one of those things that we're wired to do is to crave consistency and predictability. It stems from the old survival instincts of the past. And talking to HR professionals, I think what they're saying above all that their people want is a clear communication about what happens next and what they can expect moving forwards. And I don't know whether everybody on this call recognises that that's perhaps what their people want more than anything else. Problem is, quite often the answer is we just don't know, isn't it? But I think what people actually appreciate more than anything else from people like us is just the honesty that we don't know. But the position we're in is we might not know what's coming next in terms of months' time, but we can support people in terms of reassuring them about what's happening this week and what they need to do and what's happening the week after and perhaps even the week after that. And by breaking things down into those perceived small blocks of work that people feel comfortable with, I think that's one of the ways of helping people get through the don't know syndrome.
Great. So, I mean, if you had to narrow it down to your top three kind of tips right now to support employees, what would those top three be? Communication.
I think that this is a theme that's coming up time and time again. As clear and as unambiguous as you can be to, when people are uncertain, they need and seek clarity all the time. So the clearer we can be in our communications, the less unambiguous, the better. I think leadership now is more important than it's ever been. It's always been important. We have to be firm in our leadership, but in times like this, we also have to be compassionate. And that needs to be genuine compassion for people. Thirdly, I would say support, whether that's practical support in terms of advice on working from home, how to survive furlough, those types of things. And I think more and more now, people are recognising there's a need to support employees in terms of their personal well-being, whether that's physical well-being, mental well-being. I think we've all recognised in the past that well-being is really important. I think that's actually needed more than ever at the moment. Come to form, and is that three, Sarah?
Yeah, I think that was three.
Actually, there's another one which concerns everybody on this call, funnily enough, and that's yourself. Because if we as the leaders don't look after ourselves so that we're the best we can be in the current situation, then how can we best support our people? So look at it in terms of, it's like the caring for the carers. Who's the most important, not the most important person here, but the most important resource for your people is you. Mm-hmm. It's your responsibility to make sure you're in the best possible state to be able to support people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Certainly during these sessions that we've been doing, we've heard a lot of organisations have set up, whether it's portals, whether it's hubs, whether it's weekly newsletters, just to support, their employees' well-being and mental health during the times. You've obviously mentioned that you've, kind of been working with quite a few businesses. So the businesses that you've been working with, what are they kind of doing, and what does that look like in their organisation?
There's a whole range of fantastic things organisations are doing, but specifically in terms of wellbeing, because that's what we're here to talk about. We've actually had an interesting situation ourselves, because we're at heart, we're a coaching business, which is with health coaches, wellbeing coaches going out into the workplace to deliver workshops, screening programs, that type of thing. So towards the end of the March, our business fell off the cliff, literally within a week. Much the same way as it probably did to a lot of people on this call at the moment. We quickly transitioned everything to remote delivery. We always had it in the past, but it was always a supplement to face-to-face work. So a lot of the work we're doing with clients now for their employees is coaching sessions via live Zoom sessions, Teams sessions like we're doing now. A whole range of topics aligned to the current situation. One-to-one consultations with organisations. Then we have a lot of remote challenges and programs like that. So one of the things the organisations are finding benefit is, under the guise of well-being, is it's also providing that important social interaction for their employees. So it's a way of creating sort of, if you like, a sustainable, this is going to sound very environmental, but a sustainable social cohesion type program. So it's a method of keeping people together, keeping people apart. One of the things that I've been saying to a lot of organisations on these things is also be very, very focused about what you had before. Yeah. So if you had support services for employees already in place before this situation, perhaps the first thing to do, and it might be a bit, I know we're 10 weeks down the line now, but if you haven't thought about it, then perhaps the first thing is actually just to review those services. Are they fit for purpose now in this new situation? Talk to your employees. Are those services still working for the employees the way they should do, given the different circumstances we're in now? So I think there's an awful lot we can do there straight away. The other thing that the better organisations at this, for want of a better phrase, are really good at is what I call the cadence of communication. So what they're doing is not necessarily drip feeding, but they're planning their support programs, their communication programs in a long-term sustainable fashion, rather than sort of a mad panic and throwing the kitchen sink and everything at people right from the outset, when often a lot of the messages get lost. So I think it's the sort of types of things you're doing, reviewing what you've already had in place, and critical is how you're communicating that support out to people.
Thanks, Richard. I guess it would be really interesting to hear what the people on the call have been doing within their business to support. So if anybody wants to put their hand up or pop something in the chat, just to kind of share, with everybody else, whether it's your business, whether it's your partner's business, whether it's somebody that just kind of sharing those experiences and what people have been doing. We obviously started the kind of Wednesday session because we felt there would be a need for support in employees, supporting their mental health. We've looked at a variety of different topics, nutrition. We did a home workout session. I guess my next question would be, what can we do simply and quickly to kind of help those people?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment, isn't there, in terms of mental health and the impact the current situation is having on people's mental health. We literally published a big research piece yesterday called Divided Together, which is looking at what impact COVID-19's had and having in terms of employees and work organisations. One of the things that cropped out of there is 50% of respondents were saying that they are having bigger sort of challenges from a mental health perspective than they had before. Yeah, which is shocking in a way. When you first hear that, I think, wow. Although keep it in balance, that means half of us are okay. Yeah. So let's just keep a bit of balance there. So it certainly is. We do know, as employers, we do know that individuals' well-being does impact on their performance and their productivity, whether that's their mental well-being, their physical well-being. So actually, it's something that we need to be concerned about because it is going to affect our business. So the simple question, if in terms of quick and simple, you asked, Sarah, was if I asked everybody a rhetorical question. So what's your mental health plan for the next 3 months? There's a lot of, yeah, usual, everybody, what? And I mean that just in a really simple way in terms of, right, for the next 3 months, and keep it short term so it keeps manageable. What are you actually providing for staff to support them in their sort of mental health and well-being? Okay. You know, are there any gaps in there? What feedback have you had from your line managers that are talking to staff in terms of what the issues are for people and what sort of support programs might need to go in place? It might be, for example, a specialist coaching program on a certain topic, dealing with uncertainty. It might be getting information and facts out to people, and Louise, who's on the call today, will tell you later or post up about all the free support services that Westfield's providing that you can use for your employees in that respect. And how are you communicating that to people? You know, is it all in the same place so people know where to go if they've got some issues and they want some support and advice and access the services that you've got? Yeah. I think the other aspect, Sarah, it's not just about providing things, it's about how you as an organisation and a culture are actively working as part of your normal working practices in terms of supporting people. So what are your team leaders doing? And if you're a one-man band, I used to be one of those, you know, business owner with a few people working for me. What are you as a team leader or your team leaders doing in terms of communicating with your team and individual members on a regular basis? Okay, what are you doing to actually talk with those team members about how they're feeling? How do you understand what works, what doesn't work for each individual? So there's a lot we can do within our organisation just through interpersonal relationships to support people with their sort of mental well-being. It's not necessarily a case of just having to buy things in time. Does that make sense?
It does, Richard. I think we've
everybody's frozen.
A little bit.
If you can hear me.
Yep, you're back.
I'm going into panic mode. Yeah. Yeah, I'm back. I've got you all back. Did I freeze there, by the way?
A couple of seconds, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, you all suddenly went completely frozen and still. And it's, yes. Managing pressure. Yeah, sorry about that.
I mean,
how are you? I was going to say, Sarah, how are you doing things in relation to sort of mental health or well-being in general in terms of within the chamber and your own people?
Within the chamber, so we're hosting morning calls at 9:30, and we're taking it in turns to host them. So initially it was Alison who would host them, and then, you know, that was fine. You know, it got to the stage where the majority of us had our screens, our cameras turned off, our microphones turned off. You know, if you weren't speaking, there wasn't kind of much engagement within the team. So we kind of took the decision to start getting each of the team members to host one of the morning sessions. And then our colleague, we're blaming it on Vince because Vince had the first idea, was that we would theme them. So the first one was hats, pretty simple. We had Christmas this morning. I'd have taken down my tinsel and my wreath that I had at the back there. So that's, I guess that's just bringing a little bit of fun to the session. You know, sometimes you can wake up and think, you know, do I really want to spend the next hour, you know, just, you know, with the team? But actually, you know, you then log on and, you know, we've had very, very funny, you know, dressing up from some of the team. It's been really, really good to see them, and everybody's kind of getting into the spirit of it. We've done a couple of, I guess, social events, as you would call them. So on Thursday afternoon, 5 o'clock, like you would do normally, you might go to the pub, last Thursday of the month or something like that, just for a lemonade or whatever takes your fancy. So we've done a couple of those on a Thursday, and we're also a way to start implementing some quizzes. Just to have a little bit of kind of fun throughout the week. And obviously these Wednesday sessions, we've been really kind of encouraging the team to log on, and kind of benefit from them. Doing one-to-ones with Alison, there's a couple in the team who have kind of buddy catch-ups. It's just a chance to kind of jump on a call with somebody and have half an hour to have a catch up. We've got quite a few new team members. We've got 3 new team members who started within kind of 6 weeks of lockdown commencing. So supporting them to obviously settle in while they're not, they're not across the desk from you, can be quite challenging. So yeah, they've all gone down really well. I noticed that Robert's popped in a couple just on your kind of previous comments there. Robert, I don't know if you want to kind of unmute yourself, and you were asking a couple of questions there.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So specifically, you mentioned you did some research, and 50%. I think you said 50% had mental health issues. I'm kind of just wondering, what specifically do you mean by mental health issues?
Yeah, that particular one wasn't the saying they're having mental health issues, but and it was a very generalized question, so it wasn't specific. Is it anxiety? Is it depression, etc., etc.?
Yeah.
The question was phrased very broadly in terms of, generally speaking, would you say the current situation has been a challenge for your mental health, or that you found that your mental health has deteriorated to some degree in this situation? So it was very, very sort of broad brush that way. But with the plan that it was really there just to give a sense, rather than a diagnosis, a sense of the potential level of impact that the situation was having on people. Does that?
Yeah,
I think
so. Because I'm a counsellor psychotherapist, and I'm finding a lot of people are drinking more, and that obviously creates more anxiety, more stress. Self-esteem is definitely dropping massively, because they're not being challenged, they're not doing anything, they're not doing any work. So what actually happens is they become a lot of negativity happens as well. So you're right when you're saying mental health, but that's quite broad.
Oh yeah.
And it really is important, because I feel that after this there's going to be a massive need to pick up on a lot of people's well-being, because it'll be fragmented, I guess.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we've got to be very careful about as well is we've got to recognise that you can't at all times separate physical and mental health out. That they are interrelated. So there's an awful lot we can do in terms of our physical health that will support our mental well-being. And likewise, we recognise that often our mental, should we say, ill health, for want of a better phrase, can drive behaviours that actually then impact on our physical well-being. Alcohol's a good example there, Robert, amongst many other things. So we've got to look at it with people's health in a holistic way, rather than just focusing on one thing or the other. But as you know, Robert, the media really pick up on the mental health piece, don't they? But we've got to keep grounded and look at it in a broader sense.
Yeah. So you also mentioned, is it okay to keep going here?
Sure. Because what we were going to talk about, actually, and it'd be useful for you to contribute to this, Robert, if you're okay with this, Sarah, is how we actually manage our personal feelings in this sort of situation. So do you want to comment on that, Robert? what your advice would be.
Advice? Well,
Yeah.
I guess this is your show.
No, it's our show. No.
Right. Okay. Well, so yeah, so I do work with behavioural issues, and especially shape therapy works with behavioural issues. But I come from a humanistic point of view. So you mentioned it actually in the you had these 4 points, communication, leadership, support, self. So I'm the self part. So I work on the self. So we heal from ourselves first and foremost. But because of lockdown and things like that, we are more frustrated. We have less things to do. We have more probably leisure time, and we're not active in our brains and things like that. We probably drink more and things like that as well. So for me, it's about challenging our belief systems is really important, and thinking about the things that we can do rather than the things we can't do. I'm more interested in your courses and how that can help people that are struggling, because I'm finding I'm speaking to a lot of people with really low self-esteem at the moment. These are individuals, obviously you're doing it from a company perspective, but I love the self part, because unless the self is right and the self can be okay, then that's a good starting point. So I'm just kind of wondering how, as a organisation like you guys, can help companies to help to help individuals.
To help them individuals. So I think what I was going to go on in terms of managing personal feelings as an example, you're coming at your angle is coming at it with people that have issues and supporting them. Our angle very much when we're going into, should we say, an employee population for an organisation, is very much from an educational perspective and looking at it from a preventative point of view. So one of the things that we would do from a coaching perspective is, and looking at personal feelings, is about the focus of control. So we tend to, individuals within organizations, and this affects their performance at work as well as everywhere else in their life, if we perceive that we can't control something that we think has the potential to have a major consequence, then we start getting worried, anxious, concerned about that event. And that might be something happening in a minute's time, an hour's time, a day's time, a week's time. So part of the approach we take is giving people the sort of coping techniques, teaching the coping techniques to deal with that. So one of those, for example, is if we look at people that are considered more resilient, and you'll be aware of this, Robert, the others might, we actually do study individuals that are perceived to be a certain way, to look at how can we learn from that. They don't have an attitude of, why worry, I can't control it, approach. If they see that there's something that they can't control, rather than use up their energy negatively, just worrying and fretting about it, they actually positively take a step back and say, well, okay, I can't control it, but what can I do to influence the environment to minimize its impact? Or they might be considering, right, once that thing happens, it's going to have these consequences. So what can I plan to do now to better manage the impact of those consequences? And as soon as you start thinking more positively like that, it starts to sort of, the weight comes off your shoulders a little bit. So that's an example, Robert, rest of the group, in terms of the sorts of things we do in terms of coaching people to manage their personal feelings and manage the pressures in their life a little bit better. I'm doing quite a few things at the moment myself. One of the big things I'm doing is managing my social media intake. I don't know whether other people are doing that. They create a huge amount of worry. I'll use the phrase fake news, but you know what I mean. I'm not doing it in the Donald Trump version. But there's an awful lot of rubbish out there that actually then ends up creating anxieties for us, particularly with things that are changing so rapidly and so quickly. So we feel out of control of that. So limit your social media intake to the absolute minimum. So I literally look at the news on the BBC app on my phone in the morning, and that's it. That's me done for the day. Okay. And if something does crop up, then actually go to validated resources to check the actual facts out. So .gov.uk for sort of COVID orientated things. NHS website is absolutely brilliant, by the way, for information and advice on a whole range of issues that are happening at the moment. So validate the information. And the other thing is actually just use this. If you've got additional time from working at home, actually use it to do things you've always wanted to do and that you enjoy doing. Because the more we build that into our life, the better we feel about ourselves and about life in general, and the less consequential other things feel, because we feel better about ourselves. So, you know, my usual working day before this happened was an hour and a half commute in the morning and the evening. I'm loving this. I'm getting 3 extra hours every day. So morning, I have, of that 1.5 hours, I've actually dedicated it to things. So the first 30 minutes is dedicated to an extra 30 minutes in bed. Fantastic. And then the hour is dedicated just to going out for a run, going out on my bike, or more often not, going out with the dog for a brisk walk, and just getting myself set up for the day. So, you know, it's great. I know it's not the same for everyone, by the way, but the approach I'm taking is actually make the most of this situation, because there's actually some really good things, you know, that we can benefit out of it. And it's adopting that type of thing that then sort of elevates your mood a little and makes you feel a bit better. Anyway, Sarah, we've ignored you for a while.
That's okay.
Thanks, Robert. That was great.
No worries.
No, it's good. And Robert's actually done a session for us. Seems about 2 weeks ago. I think it's probably about 2 months ago now. So yeah, that was a really good session with Robert. Again, around the Wednesday sessions. So I guess coming on to kind of employees' morale, and how do you feel the pandemic's been affecting morale within employees?
Bit of a daft question, that one, isn't it, really? Oh, that's not a criticism of Sarah, by the way. I only mean it in that, listen, we're humans, we're social animals, we're designed to be social animals. We don't do isolation, do we? We don't do movement restrictions. It's just not in our DNA. But actually, we've got to make sure that it's not doom and gloom all the time. I mean, I've just been giving you some thoughts from myself in terms of how it's been actually positive for me. So actually not having to go anywhere, it's quite refreshing in a way. Yeah, I only get in the car once a week, and that's to go to the supermarket. I used to live in the car before, so I'm just, it's a mindset thing. I'm just embracing the things that are different in life for this. And actually, there's a number of things that I'm going to miss, which will be quite interesting how we deal with that. And looking at some of the nods on the screens, there's a few things people are sort of going, yeah, I'll miss if we go back to where it was before, because there's things that work well for me, not everything. On the positive side, then, we're seeing an awful lot that organisations are doing. Sarah, you just talked at length earlier about all the things that the Chamber are doing in terms of creating, if you like, that social interaction, that social cohesion within your organisation. We know from a well-being perspective, one of the things that work is really good for people is social well-being, social interaction. And probably what a lot of us that are working from home, even if we're enjoying working from home and the freedom it's giving us, we're still missing that social interaction that we used to get from work. So there's an awful lot of community spirit evolving in organisations, an awful lot of inventive social initiatives. And I'm sure if anybody's got any ideas about what their business is doing, a bit like Sarah was mentioning before, just drop them in the chat and share them with everybody else so that we can actually go away with some ideas that we can put back into our workplace. Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of spoken at length about what the Chamber's been doing, and there's businesses throughout the region that are doing similar things that we've heard about. How can you support employees who perhaps don't want to get involved in some of those activities? Can we engage them better? I mean, we're a small team of 7 or 8. There's organisations out there with hundreds of employees. How can we?
I think the first thing is not to fall into the trap of believing that because you've had a fantastic idea, why does that person not want to join in? Oh, it must be a problem with my comms, the way I've engaged them. You know, let's just accept and actually respect the fact that for some people, they don't want to get involved. They're happy as they are. You know, it's not down to that your communications are rubbish, Sarah, and so they've not come through to me. So by all means, keep inviting, but don't expect or demand everybody to want to join. I've said this before, and Louise will sort of shake her head when I do it again now, is at Westfield Health, we have a Thursday afternoon pub quiz or Thursday evening pub quiz. I've never been. I have no intention of going. I work with these people all day, all week. The last thing I want to do is see them on a Thursday evening. Now, that's an exaggeration. But actually, it's not for me. I'd rather spend that hour with my wife, with my family. That's just the way I am. It's not right. It's not wrong. I still get the invites every week, which I appreciate, but I sort of politely refuse them each week. So I think it's just having a bit of respect that not everybody's going to jump on your great idea.
Yeah. No, that's very, very, very true. Okay, bit of a random question, I guess, possibly. So focusing on the people on this calls as individual employees themselves, if people are more healthier, will it help them prevent picking up the virus?
Right, first of all, I'm an educationalist, I'm not a clinician. Let's get that set right, things. A virus is a virus. A virus will get you if it wants to get you, no matter how fit and healthy you are, generally speaking. The issue is, and I think we've seen it, and we've all seen it in the news and various things, is generally speaking, the fitter and healthier you are, the stronger your immune system, then the less impact any virus will have on you, and the quicker you're likely to recover from it. However, that is a generalization. There will always be exceptions. So you'll hear of someone that the virus has attacked, there've been very poor outcomes, but they were super fit and healthy before. But it may be that they had underlying health conditions that they weren't aware of, nobody was aware of. So there will be exceptions to the norm. But generally speaking, it won't necessarily stop you picking up the virus, but it will support you in lessening its impact and recovering more quickly.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. So my next question, I guess, how can we in our leadership team or HR team support one another?
So that who cares for the carers piece? Is that just wave your hands? Actually, are you in that position where you're the one looking after everyone else? If you have other people in your organisation, but who looks after you? This is a really common issue for business owners, HR professionals, and I guess good practice that's come out of these conversations when people throw up ideas is, there isn't anyone there for us. So, but what we can do is we can positively reach out to other people in other organisations that have similar roles, maybe in a similar industry, where we can, I hate the phrase, but you can buddy up and you can support each other. And I think that's where these types of things are really useful, because if anybody on this call is saying, well, actually, this is what I am, and if anybody needs a chat anytime, feel free to reach out to me. It's a good way of networking and getting those support networks going, because for a lot of us in the chamber, we are, if you like, sole business owners. There might only be us there, so there literally is no one else. So, for those people, especially in this, just reach out if you think you can support someone else. Usually means you quite like a bit of chat as well, if you're doing that. So have a go and just network up. But that's the way. I think we've just got to proactively take steps to support ourselves. It goes back to what I was saying earlier and what Robert mentioned is, You know, it's about the self. It's you've got to look after yourself to be able to look after others. And if you're a sole business operator, for want of a better phrase, you've got to look after yourself to look after your business, because you are your business.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I'd go from.
Robert's mentioned therapeutic supervision. Do you want to maybe just come in, Robert, and just explain what that is?
Just to give you an analogy, and it probably will answer probably some of the questions that you were almost describing there. So in counselling, for instance, every counsellor needs a supervisor, and the supervisor needs another supervisor, and I guess that all goes all the way up to the Dalai Lama or something like that. So it doesn't matter who you are, I guess you need to speak to somebody, and I think supervision is available. I think supervision's available a lot, and mostly in the care sector, you know, like social work. I've got supervisors and things like that. And I don't know in your line of work, Richard, if the supervision goes on, but maybe there's something there that we can look into at another time.
Yeah, I mean, in every organisation, Robert, there is supervision because you've got line management.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there comes a point that stops somewhere, because there's always the Dalai Lama, as you put it, and who do they talk to? The other issue is if you've got, I think, Caroline, you were nodding when you were saying that you're a sole business person, so there's just you in the business. So Caroline is her own supervisor. So, and that's where the reach out needs to happen to be able to sort of support. But you're absolutely right that part of what we should be doing as organisations is making sure our leadership structure are acting as leaders, so that they are supporting the people that they are supervising in the appropriate way. That doesn't always happen, of course, does it? But in times like this, it's perhaps the opportunity to start developing those types of supportive cultures.
I think that's a great business opportunity there. Basically,
well, we actually
now
you mention it. Now we do actually do we've got quite a big or popular business line where we coach line managers. So, but we coach them in terms of what we call health leadership. So, how do you as a line manager support the health of your people, which then supports the objectives of the business? And actually the first module of 6 we have in there is resilient teams need resilient leaders. So it goes back to the self again, that we touched on before, is how can you as a leader develop your own personal resilience so that you can build the resilience of your team. Yeah.
Thanks very much, gents. Okay, there's $1 million question now. Do you have any tips on how we can adapt when we're working with young children at home and trying to manage them, plus our workload, plus homeschooling, plus snack breaks?
Yeah, you just have to put your Batman cape on and that's it. Yeah, it is. I tell you what, this is probably one of the biggest things that's coming out at the moment in terms, and it certainly was when we did that research piece I mentioned before, Divided Together. Probably the key issue was parental responsibilities, balancing that with work responsibilities at home. And there are no sweeping generalized answers, because everybody's home situation is different in terms of caring, what support services there, whether you're a lone parent, whether you're a dual parent, but one parent might be on furlough, so that takes care of that issue, supposedly. Both might be working. It's a real tricky one, and I think it comes back to the leadership piece again. One, that we as leaders in organisations need to recognise that is a key pressure. We need to look at each employee and their case individually. I think importantly, we need to get a bit inventive now and a bit smarter, and actually be talking with people about what would work for you. How can you work most effectively whilst doing childcare as well? And actually give people a psychological permission to do things differently. We also have to recognise that an individual's capacity to do work for us might be reduced because of childcare responsibilities. So I think it's then becomes our moral, ethical duty as an employer to take that into account and to recognise that in these circumstances. So I think an awful lot's got to be driven by the leadership here in creating that culture that is where parents feel comfortable that they're doing things in different ways, and they feel comfortable that they're not viewed that they're using their kids as an excuse not to work. Yeah, and we are seeing some divisions and clashes amongst different groups of employees where that's popped up every so often, which is really sad actually. But you know, we've got to be as supportive as we possibly can. Yeah.
Caroline, I noticed you've put your hand up there. Do you want to unmute and jump in?
Thank you. How do you feel about health and well-being apps, you know, like Calm and Insight Timer? And if you do recommend, which health and well-being apps would you recommend?
Right, I'm not into apps big time. I haven't built them into our service portfolio. Okay, because our approach is very much, so I'm not going to give you a recommendation. Okay. It's an upfront truth. Because our coaching philosophy is very much about human coaching, because we think that's the most effective way of changing behaviours. Having said that, apps can be really useful in terms of getting people initially engaged and taking personal action. Yeah. Their validity, for want of a better phrase, in terms of creating sustainable long-term behaviour change, there isn't the evidence there yet that they're effective. But if you use something like, I don't know, My Mind Pal, Calm, any app, if that helps you and it works for you, then great. One of the things is the particularly the mind apps, they're all quite different. They come from a different angle. So what I would say is, if you're looking for something like that, is just check a couple out first and see which ones work best for you in terms of the way they operate, the support they provide for you. Yeah. There's quite a lot of good stuff actually on the NHS website, Live Well, and particularly for sort of mental well-being and supporting apps and things for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go down that route, you know that they're reasonably genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, I have looked into a few that have been recommended, but it doesn't last long. I think it's like about 5 days or something, and it's like, oh, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. The other thing is to touch base with Robert after this call. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Okay, I'm conscious of time. I do just have 3 more questions, which I think will be quite quick. I probably speak for majority of people on this call, if not everybody, that from working from home, I take less breaks. I find myself sitting at the desk. You can go and grab your lunch, you can come back and sit at the desk, and you can just continue working. You don't meet your colleagues by the kettle to have a cup of tea. You're very much kind of stuck to your desk, although that's not the ideal. So would you say taking breaks are important, and why?
Well, yeah, breaks are critical. I mean, we've actually got them built into our employment contracts. They were first part of health and safety legislation that came into employment contracts. Taking breaks during the day and having a break, for want of a better phrase, every year in the form of annual leave. So those breaks are designed from a health and safety perspective to give us time away from work to recover, even if it's just for 15 minutes halfway through the morning. So they're critically important. The problem when we're working from home is our routine, our schedules, some of the structures around daily working that are there at the workplace suddenly disappear. And this is a huge issue. And a large part of why we tend to overwork when we're working from home. One of the other things is reason for overworking at home is sometimes that people feel that there's a need to prove that they're working and not skiving because they're at home. And again, that comes down to the culture of the organisation, leadership, that type of thing. So key thing is to build a routine for the day that you follow, and building within that breaks, because we are, again, coming back to how the human body and mind evolved, we're not designed to operate 100% all the time. That's called burnout, by the way. Yeah, we're designed to operate in what's called an oscillating rhythm. So if you remember your old physics, and it's O level for me, it's an oscillating rhythm is going up and down, up and down, up and down. So we're designed to work for short periods of intense effort, followed by rest and recovery. Now, that rest and recovery might be a formal break, feet up on the table, cup of tea in the garden, whatever you want to do. Or it may be just doing less intense work tasks in between more intense work tasks. So you get a natural ebb and flow in terms of the intensity of what you do. Yeah, but absolutely critical for pacing yourselves properly. That's why we have weekends off, supposedly, as well. That's why we have evenings off, supposedly, as well. Now, we all recognise that there are times when it's all hands to the deck and you literally have to work 100% flat out all the time. But we only have the capability to do that for a set amount of time, and then our performance just drops as we start to burn out. So it's about just managing that workflow sensibly. And the difficulty for us in doing that needs a little bit of conscious thought and planning, and we're not generally very good at consciously thinking about what we should do, especially for ourselves.
Yeah. One of our sessions on a Wednesday we did a couple of weeks ago was around sleep, and we had two really good speakers, did a few kind of yoga moves from one of our members as well. But and sleep seems to be really, really important to, kind of reset yourself and set yourself up for the next day. And what tips would you give people to kind of get that good night's sleep?
What, a couple of quick tips? Yeah. So that's quite good, because it's a natural extension from rest, because the period of sleep you have in every 24-hour period is that big main rest break, recovery break, when your body recovers and regenerates to go again. Again, what our body's like is consistency and predictability. So it's not a question necessarily of how many hours sleep you get, but the quality of that sleep. And the quality of sleep can quite significantly be improved by doing a couple of things. First of all, get into a sleep routine. So that's where your body and mind are used to you going to bed and getting up at roughly the same time every day. And by that, I mean within 30 minutes, your sleep time and your wake up time. So that's the first thing. We tend to see that the quality of sleep significantly improves if you have a regular sleep pattern throughout the week. The next thing for quality of sleep in any one particular night is we need to actually prepare for sleep. So what I'm talking about there is actually having a period of time in the evening before you go to bed or in bed where you consciously look at winding down. So a little bit like if I was going to take you all out for a 10K run now, so a few of you looking aghast at that thought, but you would expect me to warm you up slowly and gradually and build up the intensity until we were running at your full 10K race pace, because I know you're all 10K runners, yeah? Sleep is exactly the same in reverse. We need to gradually wind down so the body's ready to then go to sleep in a peaceful, restful and high quality way. So simple things like that is, great way of doing that for me is dim light, read a book, because the book actually distracts you from thinking about other things that have been winding you up all day. Yeah. Don't be using this in bed. Yeah. Or your iPad or your laptop, because all that's doing is triggering I wouldn't say excitement necessarily, but it's triggering you to be more alert. And actually, a lot of these devices will have blue light emitting, which disturbs a hormone called melatonin, which is what switches off when the light goes to induce sleep. So that's how you can sort of regularity patterns, preparing for bed, and then actually your sleep environment. So that's your bedroom. So the optimum conditions for sleep are cool. So ideally 18 degrees or below, believe it or not. Dark, noise-free. None of that's surprising to anyone. But if you check your bedroom tonight, does it fit all those 3 criteria? Yeah, good. But recognize that that's the general conditions for optimum sleep. Some of us can only go to sleep with the light on. We've been like that since we were kids. Some of us can only get to sleep if we've got some gentle music playing in the background. So you've got to find your optimum sleep conditions as well. There are a couple. You could go on forever, by the way, on sleep.
There are quite quite a few. Which, if anybody does have issues with sleep, then head onto our YouTube channel and you can view the session there from a couple of weeks ago. I am ready for a 10K, Richard. I do have my running tights on. This is the great thing about webinars. You can have whatever you want on from the waist down, because I need to run to the garage to pick up the car after work. So I thought, why dirty another pair of trousers? I'll just put my running leggings on.
Yeah. Excellent.
I did have one final question, but I think actually Ruth's got quite a good question that we'll perhaps just finish on. So Ruth, if you want to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've just posted it on the chat there, but yeah, there's a real feeling, I'm obviously in a larger organisation, and there's a real feeling from the people that are left behind, and certainly the people I'm supervising, that the majority of their team are on furlough and are effectively getting a few months rest and extended holiday. They're left behind, essentially holding the fort, overworking to try and keep up. And there's lots of questions of how that's going to look like when everyone comes back to work. And yeah, there's lots of people who are absolutely knackered, and there's people who are like, whoa, we're ready to go.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I mentioned this research report that we published yesterday about divided together. Actually, that was one of the themes that came out, this division between furloughed workers and people that are working. And I've seen it in our organisation from sort of discrete conversations that I've been having with people. What we shouldn't forget is also in the research that we did, when we asked people, a good proportion of people on furlough want to be at work. And a good proportion of people that are at work, guess what? They want to be on furlough. So we're never going to have a happy situation here. I think what's important is everyone appreciates, and perhaps as leaders, we need to make sure that this is communicated to everyone, that not everyone on furlough is having a great time. Yeah, there's people on furlough that desperately want to be back at work, that feel guilty because of the situation that you describe. Having said that, half of my team I furloughed half of my team. Okay? And what I said to them is look, don't worry about the rest of us. You will never, ever again in your career have a full paid, because we're still paying everybody at 100%, a full paid sabbatical for an unknown period of time. Enjoy, just go and enjoy yourself. Take advantage of it, opportunity. It's never going to come again. Now, obviously, what we then need to do with the people that are still working is be cognizant of this potential division, and also make sure that we just take that little bit of extra time with people that are still working, if nothing else, just to thank them, make them feel appreciated, make them feel valued for the fact that they are still putting in the hours in, and some of their colleagues are on a freebie, should we say, for want of a better phrase. But I think it's also important that we're able to communicate to both groups that this is a forced situation. It's not, we've not chosen to do it this way, and there are pros and cons for both sides. Yeah, so it's not everybody on furlough is having a happy time. You know, there's a lot of difficulty out there, as there is with people that are still at work. So I just think that shared knowledge and thought. Now, one of the things that, in terms of the job retention scheme, that you can do, and I know organisations that have done it where you've got people that are working in the same role. Unfortunately, I only have a small team, so we don't have people in the same role, is where they've been furloughing people on a rota basis. So one goes off for 3 weeks, comes back, the other one goes off, and they've managed to be able to do it that way. So there may be pockets of your workforce, Ruth, where you can, should we say, be fairer.
Yeah, we have done that with some.
Okay, cool. But it's you can't do that across the whole workforce, though, can you?
No.
That's the difficulty. And then the other thing is, come July, when we're allowed to bring furloughed workers back part-time as well as full-time. But my understanding, and you'd need to check this out because I'm not a specialist in this area, is that if we bring someone back, as long as they're in work for a working week, we can furlough them again for a working week. So again, there might be some, that gives us more flexibility potentially to balance. The problem you've got is if somebody hasn't been furloughed by today, actually, then you will not be able to furlough them in the future. So that's the restriction we've got. But
yeah,
it's a really tricky one, and I think it's something as employers, if you've got people working for you, you're not just a sole trader, as it were. You've got to be really, really cognizant of any potential dynamic that has developed or could develop that way. You'll have the same thing as well, Ruth, with those people that you choose to leave at home and those people that you recall back to the workplace when you start to, they call it return to work. It should be return to the workplace, shouldn't it? So you'll get sort of potential dynamics there as well. So, and again, I think it'll come back to what we started the whole thing about, Sarah, is a lot of this is about communication and leadership, isn't it? And how we deal with those situations. But there's just never, ever going to be there's not a perfect answer to it, I'm afraid. From what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I know I said Ruth would be the final question, but I am going to throw one more at you, if that's okay.
Yeah,
and I guess it's
everybody else is all right. Yeah.
I guess it's just some top tips on becoming healthier.
Yeah, well, before that, Caroline's got a hand up.
Oh, I think that was just from earlier. She's just not taking her hand down.
Okay. Well, I think for me, I mentioned before, we talked a lot about physical health. For me, the key thing, and it comes back to this home working and exhaustion and the intensity of Zooms, is actually looking after what I refer to as our physical resilience. So that's our energy levels. So our energy levels dictate not only what we can do, but how well we do it. And they also dictate how we feel about ourselves. So quite important for our mental feelings of well-being. And all energy is really well, it's four things. The three obvious things are that we're putting the right fuel into this engine, which is our body. Yeah. So that's where we should be making sure that we're eating a healthy, balanced diet. We're keeping well hydrated. Second area is physical activity, movement, exercise. So we know that if you consider your body a machine, the fitter that machine is, the more efficient it is at using whatever energy resources or fuel you put inside you. The third area is sleep, which we've covered before. Yeah. So if we get our sleep right, if we get our right levels of exercise and physical activity, and if we're eating a reasonably healthy, balanced diet, yeah, then you will find our energy levels start to really pick up, you know, and in the words of the old French car advert, we've got a lot more va-va-voom, yeah, and we feel better about ourselves and we feel that we can do more. Okay, I think the fourth final piece of that whole equation then is, and it comes back to the thing we did on breaks and rest recovery, is how we pace ourselves during this day. So how do we pace the use of that energy? Yeah. So we're peaking at the right times during the day rather than just going 100% flat out.
Perfect.
So, simple things.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, I'm conscious of time. I know we've gone over a little bit, but there was some really good information and advice from Richard that I think he's certainly been able to share with us all. As I've said before, the recording will go up on YouTube within the next 24 hours. So if you want to revisit it, if you want to share it with colleagues, friends, family, etc., then just feel free to. It's open to everybody. So, Richard, I'd just like to say thank you very much for joining us on the session. I know that Louise has put a bit of information in the chat there, so there's Louise's email address. Robert's also put his Facebook page in as well, so please feel free to connect with each other, you know, and support one another, to be honest. So yeah, thanks again, Richard. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you on another webinar soon. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Have a great day.